All right, we will give this a couple more seconds and we'll get rolling.
Kathy, can you mute your computer? Testing.
Testing well. Ron, we have you as well?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, let's get rolling then. All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is week 4 from Dallas, Texas, and the extended SMU campus. I'm glad to have you back with us. Hope everybody is doing well, staying healthy, and protecting those around you. I am Peter Davis. My name is Peter Davis. I'm a professor in the SMU Sport Management Master's Program. And if you're with us for the first time, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. And likewise, I see a lot of registrant names that have been with us a couple times before. So welcome back. We're thrilled to have you back and learning along with us. If any of you need to, today's session is being recorded, so you can go back and take a look at it again. Likewise, the 3 weeks prior to now have been recorded and are waiting on snodgrasspartners.com for you to take a look if you haven't, or if you need to refresh a piece of the conversation we had, or if you want to share it with colleagues. We'd encourage you to go to snodgrasspartners.com and find the webinar page. It's very easy. It's right off the homepage, and you can get that information. Likewise, you can check out all the other great things that Snodgrass Partners offers to their clients, particularly in the Intercollegiate Athletics Forum. For the last few weeks, we've been lucky enough to be joined by individuals from within the Snodgrass Partners network of executives, leaders, and consultants. But we get to flip the switch a little bit here today, and we're going to talk directly to some of the Snodgrass Partners themselves, directly from the Snodgrass Partners mothership, if you will. Although the mothership is a misnomer, because that typically means one place, and Snodgrass Partners is by no means sitting in one place, as you'll begin to learn here in a moment. But I really do hope that the topic today is timely and has immediate foresight, because we're talking about the job market. And at this point, we all know somebody that's been negatively impacted. Their job has been negatively impacted because of COVID-19. I won't take a poll through the Zoom webinar here, because I think it might be depressing. But I am sure that if I did, 85% of you would pop up and say, yes, I know somebody that's been furloughed or lost their job or had their pay diminished in some capacity during this craziness. And in fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was 100% of people that came across that. And to that end, if you haven't been affected, or you don't know that somebody that's been affected, why don't you put your birth date in the chat window, or the Q&A window, so I can play the lotto tonight with your numbers, because there's just no way that's happening right now. But the flip side to joblessness and furloughs and pay reductions has got to be a return to hiring and salary leveling and normalcy. And that's why I say I hope today's conversation has some immediate foresight. We need the job market to get back to normal, and not just here domestically, but globally. This is obviously a global issue we're dealing with. But the sooner it gets back everywhere else, the sooner it gets back in intercollegiate athletics as well, and just the athletics industry overall. And if you're going to be ready for that time, whether that's next week or October, or God forbid later than that, but it may be, then you really need to be ready. And that means getting plans drawn up. That means getting your plans in place and ready to execute, and then updating those as you go every 4 to 6 weeks or whatever it may be. Make sure that your plans are still relevant. Make sure that your plans are still ready to go and waiting for the green light, whatever that green light may look like. And to get you ready for that, we've got some great minds on the subject here to chat with us today. We've got Steve Snodgrass, who is the founder of Snodgrass Partners. And let me flip through this a little bit and get you so we know who we're talking about. So we've got Steve, and we've also got one of his partners, Ron Prettyman. Both gentlemen are here and ready to help you prepare for what's coming next. So let me first introduce these guys a little bit, and then we'll get rolling. So, like many of you, before launching Snodgrass Partners, Steve was a 4-year student athlete, and then became the men's head tennis coach at his alma mater at Kansas State. So pretty strong accomplishments there, and so that tells you that he's sitting in a world in which you sit today, and outside of coaching. Steve has amassed over 3 decades of executive management experience across numerous different industries that really make him a go-to executive in the field of executive recruiting. People know what they're getting when they talk to Steve. And noting the opportunity to recruit executives was not the entire world, he figured a way to put his passion for sports together with his passion for business, and along the way decided to start helping athletics recruiting as well. So coaches, administrators, and others like that, both in the professional and especially intercollegiate side of things. And then a lot of his clients were saying, Steve, you're doing really well with this, but I need help with this business issue. And I know you've got this business background. Can you help on a consulting side? And that turned into another part of business for Snodgrass Partners, which is now turned into Snodgrass Partners Executive Recruiting and Consulting, and all the great work that they're delivering to the industry out there. So today, Steve's joining us from Sedona, Arizona, and unless we have somebody joining us from the campus of Pepperdine, I'm just going to go ahead and say that he's got the best background of all of us. And you'll see what I mean. Yeah, we've got mountains and trees, and it's kind of silly what he gets to look at out the window today. But before sitting in front of that beautiful mountain, Steve has also had the opportunity to hire a number of people along the way, and one of those people is on the line with us as well, and that's Ron Prettyman. He's joining us from Indiana. So I said there is no general mothership for Snodgrass Partners. That's because we've got Arizona represented today. We've got Indiana represented. There's also Virginia, Texas. There are a whole bunch of places that Snodgrass Partners teammates live and work and deliver excellence. But let me tell you about Ron, because this guy knows hiring. He knows sports administration hiring. There's no question about it. For the most recently, he was with the NCAA, where he oversaw 17 different national championships. And having worked at the NCAA, I can tell you that is not a small feat. 17 of anything in the NCAA infrastructure, right? That's a lot. So he was there. And then prior to that, he spent more than a decade at Indiana State as athletic director. And he'll touch base on a little bit more than he's been, but certainly knows and understands the world of sitting in athletic director's chair, which means that he knows fundraising, campus planning, committees, championship hosting, leadership, marketing, HR, finance, and certainly recruiting, not only of student athletes, but of staff members themselves. So he knows this stuff inside and out, and he's eager to share more with you today. So let's get settled in a little bit, and we want to frame your brain. So whether you're an administrator getting ready to backfill or fill roles that have come through typical attrition that happens in any given year, or certainly through the COVID craziness. I still don't have a better word for that, but the COVID craziness and what's happening in the job market today. There are going to be jobs that need to be filled, and that's coming. And then on the flip side of that, there's some of you out there sitting today saying, well, I'm not the one hiring, but I need to be hired, or I'm ready for my next opportunity. Well, we're going to address that as well. But my favorite part about the conversation today is just that, is those people that are looking for jobs kind of get a little bit of peek behind the curtain at what the administrators are doing, how they're thinking, and how they're going about aligning themselves to get that hiring going again. So as we do move through the material, I would encourage you to utilize your Q&A piece on the bottom of the screen. Pulling it up so I know it. Yeah, there's a Q&A button at the bottom. So if you've got a question, please throw those out to us. I'll be collecting those and looking at those as we go, and I can pass those on to our guests today. And if we don't get to them all, we will figure that out and we'll get back to you with answers. So even if you've got a very personal question that you want to keep just to yourself, you can even put that in a question, say, hey, this is just for me, but what do I do in XYZ? then let me know, and we'll be able to help you with that on the backside after the webinar is complete. So we've got 45 minutes. I just talked way too many of them. So let me throw this, Steve. I'm gonna throw it over to you, Steve, and I think you're gonna kick us off. So with that, let me hand the controls to you.
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate SMU partnering with Snodgrass Partners. We started this off with just having 4 webinars scheduled in June, and now we've broadened that to include all of July. So I hope your listeners will look at that schedule for what's remaining. And in fact, they can even go back and pick up on the past 3 or 4 that we've had.
That's been kind of fun. We've had a couple of people say, hey, this is really neat what you're doing. Can I add some? And
exactly.
You know, that's how we got from 4 to 9, and we may not be finished with 9.
Yeah, so thank you on that. And I will say that I'm sure all of us are kind of tired of the word unprecedented, but unfortunately, that's where we are when we're talking about human resources. And whether it's a company, small or large, or whether it's a educational institution, college or university, human resources is the issue right now with this environment, and we need to address it. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about this within the sports industry specifically, and a couple of thoughts from the side of the desk of interviewing, which also takes into account not only the hiring, but the retention. So seeking experience and credentials who function in this new landscape is going to be challenging enough. And I'd like to challenge the listeners who are hiring to think like an entrepreneur and broaden your department from many perspectives. And just to name a few, what's the perspective from your alumni, the student body, your own community, and of course, the conference for which you belong? So it's going to be ongoing, evolving, and the key will be that newer, better, more efficient cost savings means to operate, but also to lead. And so within the sports industry itself, first, I think an institution ought to look nationally, and I'm betting the last 5 or 6 months that's exactly what you've been doing, looking nationally at your constituencies as to what's going on with them through webinars or phone calls or just discussions among yourself. And then secondly, with your own department and how you're functioning and looking at this process. And then from there, defining your own challenges, what's coming upon you here as you get ready for the fall enrollment and seasons. And so from the hiring and retention side of the desk, you can look internally as to, well, which staff member is going to lead that hire, or a selection committee. Or if you don't feel like you have that means internally, then that's when you look externally, and that would be a firm like ours. And that's what we're going to discuss a little bit today. So you might show that next slide of bullets for the viewers. And oh, holy cow, this is an important job you have. You either create a problem or you solve a problem with hiring. And it's just not enough to just post the position and watch the floodgate of resumes come in. Most of them won't be on the mark as far as filling or addressing that job description. And so how do you sort through that? We have a methodology of doing it, and I'm open. Our whole team is open to helping you do that. If you choose to do it on your own, we'll give you ideas. But if you hire a firm like ours, we have some proven methodologies and we feel we're pretty efficient. I remember a women's basketball coach job at Lafayette, and Tom Jacobs and I walked in the door, and the happiest people at the front desk were the 3 administrative assistants that said, "Here are the resumes, thank goodness you're here." And they turned them over to us. And we grew those 35 that they had received to over 125 in less than 3 weeks. And
well, that's a good point too, Steve,
yeah,
because the people that are often going through those things aren't necessarily trained to understand what a good resume or cover letter or qualification looks like. And it's not to say that there aren't plenty of people out there that can do that, but I think the hiring manager is probably very well set up to do that. But the time and the effort to go through the hundreds of resumes is a little daunting.
well, that's a good point, Peter, and that's exactly why I brought up the fact that in the human resource evaluation that you're doing within your department is, can I get this done internally? And if you've got the means and the people to do it, great.
Yeah,
but
efficiently or effectively. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have that, then that's the money's well spent, because it's a proven that hiring is a costly process. Human resource organization SHRM states that a $50, $60, $70,000 a year salary can cost you $25,000, $30,000 a year later if you have to rehire that position.
So you're talking, if you hire 2 people in 2 years, you just doubled the cost of that position.
Right, and so that's why I started it off. You can either create a problem or you can solve a problem.
Yeah.
So start off right and evaluate what the parameters are of that position, and then surround yourself with the right tools to hire properly. That next bullet on reaching out to your network, and that's another worn out word, is networking, but that still holds true in this process. And here's the explanation. So whether it's your hiring manager on staff, or you, the athletic director that's doing this, or university president or a selection committee, go out and find the people that you know are in that space, whether it's a coach or administrative position, and identify who those top 5 or 10 people are that you would call on. Why? Because I learned back in the mid-90s when I started this whole thing called recruiting, is that when you call people, the first thing is, "Oh, I'm not interested." Well, you ought to be interested in taking a phone call. Let them know that you're networking. And we're not calling to say you ought to have this job. We're calling to let you know it's in the marketplace. So you might put your ear to us and listen to it, because it could be for you, but most of the time it's not. And that's when that person gets the aha moment and says, "Gee, Mary Sue or Bob, you ought to call them." And they give you the green light to use their name, or they say, "You know, I'd give you this name, but I don't want to be named." And we honor that type of thing. And your staff should be coached to do that type of process toward networking. So that's exactly what that next bullet says, is if they're not interested, they typically can surface people that would be, or at least you can position it the same way. I've learned over the years, it's usually not that person, but it's 2 or 3 even removed from the person they referred us to.
So if you're recruiting, it's no time to be shy.
Absolutely not. And have your hand out for names and ask for them, because that's where your best candidates are going to come from usually.
Sure.
Not the unsolicited ones.
Right.
Then that gets to the organization side of the ledger, and that, whether it's a selection committee or whether it's an individual on your staff, preparing a list of questions that run a thread through each of the candidates is really key, because you don't want to have a set of questions for this candidate and another set of questions for another candidate.
Right.
You want it to be very consistent.
Apples to apples.
Yeah, apples to apples. And then your committee or that hiring manager can evaluate, keeping notes and have an evaluation sheet, like a 1 through 5, 5 being outstanding. And they're based on the parameters that you have for that job. So they're your bullet points. We don't put together a bunch of cookie cutter bullet points for an evaluation sheet. We create the evaluation sheets that that hiring manager committee wants to have in the candidates they see. And
Sure.
so then you get to that right fit situation. Well, everybody talks about culture. Do they fit our culture? Boy, that's a subjective thought. Because I've seen people hire way too much in their own image, their own background.
Yes.
And they really need to be more diversified. They need to be filling voids that they don't have on their team. And how do you get to that? Well, asking the right questions of that candidate, not just telling about how great a job you have for people.
And that speaks to having others involved in the process as well, and not keeping that just on your own desk. And that could be a search firm like Snodgrass Partners, or it could certainly be others within your own organization.
Absolutely.
That have an opportunity to take a look at candidates and say, yeah, I understand why you like this person, but is that what we really need for this role?
Well, hiring managers get so enthusiastic about what they're offering. And we tell people all the time, if you're recruiting somebody, really recruiting, if they're jumping in your lap, they want and need a job probably.
Mm-hmm.
And so to recruit the very best, you want to learn, and you want to kind of find out with them, do they want this job and why? And they may not be jumping in your lap to get the job. They have a great job many times. And so that's the really recruiting process of why you should jump ship and come to our organization or our institution.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if people are jumping in on any questions on that, because that's a really key component. But the next piece on our bullets is reference checks. And again, I learned long ago that everybody will give their rose-colored glass type of reference to call. But the way we do it is we ask the candidate to call the reference or 3 references. And we like 360, somebody they've reported to, somebody that's been a peer, someone that's been a subordinate and reporting to them. And you get that paradigm from that position around that candidate. But more importantly, that candidate needs to call the reference and say, hey, Ron Prettyman or Steve Snodgrass, Tom Jacobs, our co-founder of our organization, of our sports division, is going to be calling or emailing and setting the time. This is not a howdy call. Do you have a few minutes? This is a scheduled, we respect that they're busy, and your staff members could do the same thing. Schedule that reference and set the stage with the candidate to say, it's okay to give a candid report, meaning we're not digging for dirt on them and what bad things they've done or not done well, but how best to position them. And so when the candidate has that aha moment and his or her reference has that aha moment that these people are really seeking, whether it's your staff member or our firm member, calling to find out what makes this a good hire for them. And that's establishing, for instance, that Peter Davis doesn't do finance well. Don't put him in that pigeonhole.
That would be true, by the way.
And so that's the kind of thing you're seeking, so that if that hiring manager hires this person, they're setting them up to succeed and not throwing them into an area where they're not going to succeed.
Well, I like that you're preparing the reference to have that more candid conversation because that's going to provide the potential employer so much more valuable information than, of course you should hire them, which is, kind of what you'd expect them to say. But if you can have a candid conversation and learn some more about, even if you're just learning more about this through the reference, the strengths of the candidate, that's going to tell you, yes, those are the strengths, exactly the strengths we need to continue forward.
So one more diamond in the rough I want to offer up, and it's, again, something we've just learned over the years, and that is, it's one thing to get a confidential resume from the candidate, but ask them to write an executive summary, a page or two, no more than that, not heavy paragraphs, but pay attention to the job description, Mr. or Miss Candidate, and tie into this executive summary exactly how you think you fit. The resume is going to be a given, your chronological order of your career. And those things can be addressed in the interview process.
Sure.
But the executive summary, in your own words, allows the committee or the hiring manager to set the stage for, wow, you've really given some thought to this position, how your experiences fit in. And it creates another dialogue in the interview process. The first one is maybe centered around the chronological aspect of the resume.
Yeah.
But the executive summary gets it deeper, and it can be a really good dialogue and exchange.
So that makes sense. So you've got kind of like that, you got that cover letter up front, followed by the statistics of the resume. You got the reference check in there that you want to go deep on the reference, not just a hello, did they work there? Yes, thanks, goodbye. And then I like the executive summary. That's kind of a new piece for me to hear about. But that almost asks the candidate to say, okay, you've been through the process, you've learned about this, you knew you were excited about the role to start with because you thought one thing, but now you've learned. Let's see what you've learned and make sure that we're talking again. It kind of goes back to that apples to apples. Make sure we're talking apples to apples. Make sure you as a candidate are listening to what I need as a hiring manager.
As a firm, we try our best to first of all, our client is the hiring manager. They pay us.
Sure.
So, but we try our best to get on that side of the other side of the table when the candidate becomes a finalist, not to coach them to win the job, but to help them set their best foot forward to vie for the job. Because, well, first of all, we guarantee the search a year. So selfishly, we don't want to do it again free.
Right.
I got to say that very transparently. But our reputation is on the line for being hired again or referred. And the other thing is, most of the time, we're talking to candidates that are gainfully employed. We in good conscience, we don't want them to switch jobs and then go 6 months in and go, what have I done? Yeah. So we try to bring all the parties together to make a good decision.
Sure.
But that
so one question that popped up, Steve, is so you're a hiring manager, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but you're a hiring manager, and then you get someone from above, be that at the university or athletic department level, that comes in and says, here's somebody you need to take a look at. And this is someone maybe, so let's call them political candidates. How do you deal with that?
Wow, boy, what a great question, because it's kind of our sales pitch to hiring our firm, because you're going to get these unsolicited resumes, and it could be in the mail or email, but it could be from a higher up or a board member or a selection committee member, and it's their favorite candidate.
Right. Whether they're qualified or not.
Just let everybody know that's going to Snodgrass Partners, and they are going to fairly, very objectively bring that candidate in just like all the others, and they will be presented just like all the others. And therefore, it takes the political ball off the shoulders of the committee or the higher ups even, because if the higher up demands it and they get hired and it doesn't work out, it's kind of egg on his or her face.
Yeah, sure.
So
Kind of, you save everybody.
I sure don't want to take up all the time because Ron Prettyman can really address the candidate side, but it's so key. And by the way, you mentioned cover letter. People who send a dear sir or dear madam and didn't do any research as to who the hiring manager is.
Who the sir or madam is.
You know, even as a search firm, could you not have done a little research and found out that you're talking to the CEO of the company or the, you know, a VP on the administrative staff of an institution?
And I would guess even if you do some pretty basic research and you find out who the general hiring manager should be, VP, EVP, SVP, AD, whoever it is, if you guess and guess wrong, but guess logically, you still get credit for it.
You know, true. But also within the cover letter, you can put up a couple of points if you've done your research as to the items off your resume that could be the hot points and differentiating you from a stack of resumes that are on that hiring manager's desk.
Right. Well,
so, but I'm going to let Ron.
Yeah, say let's go to the other side of the table then.
Yeah.
So Ron, we're going to say goodbye to the mountains, and you get another background like I've got, but it's not all bad. But I think you're on mute. And now you're not.
About that.
There you go.
Steve, that was a great presentation. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Just as by way of introduction, I was an athletics director at 3 different levels for 34 years. Worked at the NCAA as a managing director of championships, oversight of 17 national championships, some of which were really high profile. And I've recently really enjoyed my work with Snodgrass Partners, and it's provided me some very practical experience in the hiring ranks and the opportunity to share some best practices that I hope we can share with you today. I'm going to abbreviate my comments a little bit so that we have time for questions and answers at the end. But one of the things that's really important is to identify, as you're going through this process, the value of athletics. If it's a professional program, if it's an intercollegiate program, whatever your goal is that you're shooting for, whatever you're being interviewed for, be able to articulate the value of it and the qualities that you can bring to the table to help with that. As you get started in the research, when I started looking at this presentation, I started looking at areas like LinkedIn, NCAA Market, Indeed.com, NAIA Career Center, NACDA Career Center, various search organizations and firms, conferences, schools. There are literally thousands of jobs out there right now. And it's really important that you be creative. You don't just get pulled into looking at the NCAA news or market every day, but you look at other various things, because some schools and businesses have had better responses from working with certain organizations. So broaden your horizons as you're doing your search. Get some help in creating a comprehensive.
I was going to say that's a good point, Ron, because there are some places where it's free to post a job and others are not free. And right now, people are looking to save as much money as they can, and maybe maybe they're just going to the free site. So maybe that one you're looking at every day doesn't have the job that you're looking for, but it's right under your nose in your hometown or whatever it is. So make sure you're looking at a number of different avenues, but because you're right, they're out there. And another thing I'll say, just looking at the world and some of the students that I work with, there are a lot of roles that are on hold right now, but they're still hiring for them. And when the company is ready to hire, they want to be ready to hire. They don't want to be ready to start the interview process. They want to be ready to hire. So they're still going through the steps right now, even though they're not 100% sure what that start date looks like.
I believe the job market is going to return with a vengeance. You're right, Peter.
Yep.
Get some help creating a comprehensive, thorough, and eye-catching resume. Keep it current, be accurate. Peter mentioned earlier, update it every few weeks. Make sure you're up to date on things. Don't exaggerate on your resume, because a good hiring manager is going to find out what the truth is when they do a thorough search of you. Make a good first impression, whether it's on video, whether it's on face-to-face, or whether it's by written letter. So do your very best to make a great first impression, and use your references.
Let me stop on that one though. That one's interesting, just because, hey, I've learned over the last few weeks, and I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I've gotten a lot better at this webinar type thing. And part of that is just getting comfortable with looking at a camera instead of looking at yourself on the screen, or I don't know, there are a whole bunch of different, or using these headsets. Like, I had no idea the difference that they make, but it makes a difference. So practice these things with, with friends and family. You can practice on FaceTime. It's no different than Zoom, right? It's a camera, it's an interaction. So get some practice, because it is a little bit different nowadays, especially for people probably that are used to, we'll call it the old way of job interviews, right? That you're not used to being interviewed on camera or sitting in your own home, but that's going to happen for a while. So learn it, get used to it, because it's not going away.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, as far as preparation goes and research, present yourself professionally with your resume. Make sure you're a good fit for the job that you're seeking. Don't be a job chaser. If you don't have the prerequisites for a job that you really want, go out and find a way to get that experience. Volunteer. I was chatting with a colleague earlier today, and I've had the opportunity to run several national championships, either on campus or for the NCAA, and have worked with hundreds of volunteers, quality young people that are looking to break into the job market. And I've been able to sign off on their contributions to what they've done. And as an athletics director, if I had a candidate that's looking for a position that has experience at a national level competition, I'm going to take a second look at that resume. So find a way to add to your resume, be professional, and do your research about the position that you want, and be knowledgeable. Other thing is with resumes, be yourself. Tell stories, don't just recite facts. Let people know who you are. Relate to the people so that they can understand who you are, and be your real self. Ask yourself the question, if I was this person, would I want to work with me every day? What's your personality like? How are you putting forth your best efforts? Unless you're elite, people aren't going to come knocking on the door trying to get you to work for them. So you have to take action, create opportunities for yourself, surround yourself with good people, find ways to build resumes, evaluate their passion, evaluate people's expertise and their professionalism. You know, the most important job you'll ever have is the job you have right now, because if you do well, you're going to get opportunities in the future. What are you doing to show your employer how important you are to the organization? Are you on time? Are you service oriented? Are you creative? Do you think outside the box? Or are you sitting around waiting for somebody to tell you what to do? Are you just going through the motions? Are you a clock watcher? You have a job that you have to earn every day, and people are going to be evaluating you every day. Are you contributing to the passion on your job, or are you contributing to the stress on your job? Make that difference every day. And if these qualities are evident in who you are and what you do, they'll open doors for you, and qualities will follow wherever you take your talents. You know, the sports industry.
If you're working inside sports, going back to our last conversation just a second ago, if you're working inside sports, then you've got those volunteer opportunities dripping around you. They're everywhere. And sometimes they're not that easy to see. I mean, for my first couple of years at the NCAA, I guess I recognized there was other stuff to do around, but I really never, well, it wasn't that I wasn't raising my hand. I just didn't know that I should forcefully, or I should start to raise my hand before a question is answered. But you can do that really easily and find some great stuff. If you're interested in marketing, I guarantee you, if you go talk to the admin in charge of marketing and say, hey, I'm interested in, learning a little bit more, helping to learn, then there are all kinds of opportunities out there. Likewise with any other discipline. So raising your hand before a question is answered is a great way to put some additional experience under your belt, I would imagine.
That's right. And just in closing, our industry is solid. Our company has done a great job in placing quality people and quality organizations, but we're really selective in who we recommend to our clients. Our screening process is thorough. Our candidate pools are diverse and qualified. And the reason for that is because our reputation is at stake. Steve Snodgrass put his name on this company. And so every time we hire somebody, every time we work with a client, our reputation is at stake. And so it's essential that we treat everybody with white kid gloves and go about our task and do it well and make sure that we're doing what we've been hired to do. We're seeking the right candidate for the right position in the right organization. The jobs are out there, they're reemerging, there's going to be more every day, the future looks bright, and I hope you'll be a part of this resurgence of jobs and be a star out there. So I am certainly open to any questions, and I know Steve is as well. So Peter, what do you have in the queue?
Well, I wanted to, it's more of a comment than a question, but you mentioned as you started that, you're looking at all these different websites and there are questions, there are jobs out there, there are thousands of jobs out there. But I want to reiterate that too, just talking to you guys before we started the webinar today and at other times. And I should point out too, Steve, that you appreciate SMU. Well, that's a highway that goes both directions. Having Snodgrass Partners deliver the quality of topic and theme that we've been able to put for these first 4 weeks and for the next 5 weeks to follow has been great, and it's really driven the audience that we have, so that's super. But on those questions, and I'll get right to you, Steve, or on the jobs that are out there, I also know from talking to you, this is where I was going, that that jobs are being placed still within the sports industry. It's not, you've had a CEO level position within the sports industry and other positions that you're looking for right now. So it's not as though everything's come to a full tilt stop, perhaps slowed and different, but by no means have things stopped. Steve. Oh, mute. See, like I say, the more I do this, the better I get at it.
Okay, unmuted. You brought up a couple of things, starting with the SMU and Snodgrass Partners relationship. And I wanted to let the audience know that it's ironic that, I've done this like 30 years, but the last 5 years is where we added the sports division. So we're still in our infancy. But the irony of it all is that I've been fortunate to surround myself with people like Ron Prettyman, Tom O'Connor, Mitt Winter, and then those are people that carry the Snodgrass Partners banner and email address and work on assignments. But then we have these allied partners for which they are serving on some of these webinars. And so we can't be all things to all people, but holistically across the board, we've established a firm that's kind of up to date with the environment we're in with COVID-19, and is that we're all over the country, as you mentioned, and people get to raise their hand and say, I want to work on that. And so we bring the relevant consultant to the client's table to achieve what they're wanting to gain in some consulting services, whether it's hiring or whether it's Title IX issues or compliance issues, or my goodness, we did a 360 around men's and women's basketball for a major league, a mid-level league, and that incorporated the men's and women's basketball coaches, but also the athletic directors and the presidents of those universities. Well, we couldn't have done that without a business model that has all these experts on our team to bring to the table to get that function and results for the client.
Yeah. So speaking of experts, questions come forward on the side of references. how large should your pool of references be? So like maybe you've got, I think everybody's got like they're asked for like 3 references, right? So if you're asked for 3, should you have 6 or 8 in the pool to pick the best one for the job, or do you just stick with the 3 and focus on those?
Well, the answer isn't just cut and dry. I think the answer is know your audience, know what the position is about, because you may have your favorite 3 or 6 on queue all the time, but in a certain circumstance, you may need to go to a different one. But it's not your, it's not your neighbor. It's not where you go to church. It's, it's somebody that can speak to your background, whether from a boss standpoint or from a peer standpoint or from a subordinate standpoint. And those are the most effective. But the key is giving a balance.
Well, that was something that I hadn't really necessarily considered. I guess I have 2 people kind of on my reference board, but I hadn't really considered why I had them there. But having the subordinates, I think, is an interesting perspective, to have somebody that's worked for you to be able to answer questions as well. I mean, that when I'm hiring, that is certainly one of the more interesting questions that I pose, is, or the people that I'd like to learn from. So that's an interesting perspective. Ron, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, Peter, I would just say that I would probably use a different set of references if I was trying to get an athletics director job than I would if I was trying to be work at the NCAA, so to speak.
Oh, that's fair.
It wouldn't necessarily, it would be people who knew my area of expertise or my strengths and weaknesses based on the job that I'm going to be doing. So I think you surround yourself with good people that can be your mentors. Tom Jacob calls them your personal board of directors.
Yeah.
People that you can lean on, that are going to be your mentors, will tell you honestly when they think you've screwed up, but will also pat you on the back when you've done a good job. And so I think you can be selective out of your pool of references to help you attain the job that you're seeking.
Awesome. Awesome. Steve?
From both sides of the table, I would add this too, and that is people say, well, gee, I don't have the experience and I want this, I want somebody to give me the chance.
Sure.
And so that's from a candidate standpoint. And sometimes from the hiring side, I've even taken, on the business side, many times, I've taken 4 or 5 candidates that fit all the parameters in the job description.
Yes.
And then you find somebody that's just a star, and I call them the person who, whatever they're going to do, they're going to overachieve. Why? Because they've been an overachiever all their life. They're not going to change.
Right.
They're going to be an overachiever, whatever you give them. So sometimes both sides of the table can take a look and say they don't meet all check all the boxes. But give me a chance, Mr. Hiring Manager or Miss Hiring Manager. And the other side is, I'm going to bet on you. But here's what I need you to do.
Yep.
You need to get this certification, or you need this, or you need that. And I want you to spend some time. One of the first jobs I had out of college at a bank, I thought I was going to be a big shot marketing person. And the president of the bank made me go down and see how the mail came through. And then I was a teller for 3 months. And then I worked in the trust department. And then I worked with the loan officer. He bet on me.
And you picked up something every step along the way.
Absolutely. So bet on people.
Excellent. So we'll do one more question here and then we'll wrap up. But this is one I like because I said at the beginning, I like this because I think some of the people that may be job seeker, and we're all job seekers, right? But some of the people that are job seekers may get a peek behind the curtain. So this question is about reference checks. And if you're the hiring manager, to tell us your position on contacting references that are not on the board, that haven't been provided by the candidate, but just kind of that 6 degrees of separation. I'll add to the question, like how frequent is that? And, is that in bounds, so to speak?
Well, I'll field that question. First of all, we try our best to keep it within the references that are given us with that methodology we pointed out earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just simply times when somebody. It's not 6 degrees of separation, it's 1 degree, because you know somebody that knows that person.
Right.
And I think sometimes it calls for a confidential call just to verify something that maybe came out in the vetting process that you wanted to just make sure. But somewhere along the line, there's a little bit of diciness to me of going end around to find something out. I would rather do it above board. And we tell candidates all the time, you're going to be drug tested. We're going to check on credit reports and felony reports and sex offender and XYZ. We've got a profile using a company called Validity Screening that is on our website, by the way, and they check out these things, and that candidate gives authorization to check it. Hey, I've had a candidate withdraw because they came back to me and learned that I was going to do degree checks, and they hadn't finished the degree. And I said, well, why'd you put it on your resume then? And it was a teaching moment and a scolding moment. But for goodness sakes, don't. It's unbelievable.
Make sense of things. Ron, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, just to go along those lines, one of the things that I've done in the past is I've asked a candidate right up front is, do you have a problem with me contacting references that are not on your reference list? And if they say no, that gives you a little bit of a heads up on things. Yep. If they say yes, it gives you a little bit of a heads up on things.
Sure does.
And so you don't necessarily have to tell them who you're contacting,
if
but
anyone.
You are telling them that you may go off the record with some things.
Well, one more point on it is the confidentiality feature is huge. And we talk to candidates all the time about, we promise to keep this confidential, but we lose that a little bit as we get deeper into the process.
Sure.
And that just simply means that if you're working with a selection committee, heck, somebody could be at a cocktail party and just happen to inadvertently or unknowingly bring up something.
Of course.
But to go end around, I just keep in mind the confidentiality and respect of that person. I think there's a time to do it, but I prefer transparency. Great.
Well, guys, this has been fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing this with us. Thank you for partnering with SMU in this endeavor. And we know you're here every week paying attention and helping to drive the success of this webinar series. And you can see that going forward here in the next 5 weeks and what we've got coming up. You mentioned validity screening on July 28th. They're going to be talking about screening and the importance not only of screening candidates, but maybe even of student athletes and what they can do there. We'll get into NIL and student athlete compensation a little bit, but next week, Larry Bonfante will join us from CIO Bench Coach, and he's the leader of that organization, and he's going to talk about focus and prioritization. I think it's going to be kind of a macro version of what we talked about today is owning that focus and prioritization. We talked about that today as far as job seeking or job hiring. But that might be for you as an individual, for your team, for your company, for your athletic department, whatever it may be. He's going to talk to us about the importance of that and some ways to put that into place, to put that into play on a daily basis. So we hope you all will come back and join us for that next week. Go ahead and register for that. And in the meantime, if you have need or desire to reach out to any of us, I want to make sure we end with this slide so you can see my email address at SMU or the two gentlemen, Steve and Ron at Snodgrass Partners. And again, a reminder that this recording will be housed, as are the other ones, on snodgrasspartners.com. It's very easy to find when you get there. So With that, I'll just say thank you to everybody for joining us, certainly our guests included. And until next week and beyond, be safe and be well. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.